Planet Crafter is a game where you take a deserted, barren planet with seemingly no life and try to turn it into a colonizable planet. But this is not an easy task. We begin by crash landing onto our new home for quite some time.
Correct your trajectory. Imminent impact. Imminent impact.
Once landed, I check my surroundings and realize I have a message from Sentinel Corp. We'll be seeing a lot from them, and basically just summing up that we are assigned to this planet and we need to terraform it. We need to first reach 175,000 Ti. In the crate that we find in our life pod, there are 2 oxygen capsules, a lot of food, and a Lerma seed. I then decide to go out and check our surroundings, gathering resources needed for a Tier 1 backpack and a Tier 1 oxygen tank. On my way back to craft the oxygen tank, I noticed a giant wreck in the distance, something I'd be exploring later. With our new Tier 1 backpack and our Tier 1 oxygen tank, I decided that I should probably craft the only other 3 things I can really craft at all. With our newfound resources, I decided to craft the deconstruction chip and the construction chip, allowing us to craft a base and deconstruct it at will. And now we have our first little base. Although this is not a permanent setup as I will be moving in the future, this is a good start. While getting some resources for our newfound base to power it, I stumbled across our first crate. This crate had a lot of goodies in it, but the most important things were the Pestera and the Shanga seeds that increased my oxygen multiplier. I decided to set up a few wind turbines to actually get power to our base so I could breathe in it, but also power things to start getting terraformation process. With our newfound power, we add a drill to our base. Although very slow, it does increase our terraformation index. I then get my first Tier 1 veggie tube, which allows me to put my Pestera seed in, giving us a 200% oxygen multiplier, increasing our terraformation just a little bit further. I decided to expand my base where I'd eventually store heaters, storage, and many more things. I then craft a Tier 2 crafting station that allows us to craft a Tier 1 exoskeleton and later on, Tier 2 equipment. I then craft this progress screen that allows me to see my oxygen, heat, and pressure per second alongside our complete terraformation. My drill was looking a little bit lonely, so I gave him some friends. I also got this new screen that allowed me to see what I could unlock through progression stages alongside decode blueprint chips, although I did not know I could do that for quite some time. I find my first blueprint chip here, although I don't use it for a while. I also add some storage to my base because my inventory was getting very full. And I unlock the Tier 2 backpack, which I will be crafting immediately, alongside a Tier 1 exoskeleton and a Tier 2 oxygen tank. I then decide to go explore our first shipwreck. These shipwrecks hold a lot of valuable resources, but unfortunately I have to make multiple trips as my backpack cannot hold all of it. Upon entering the ship, I realized that, yeah, it's really dark, so I decided that getting the flashlight chip would be my first priority. Thankfully, I found a Tier 1 heater that I could deconstruct and put in my own base, as I didn't really have iridium, and I didn't know where to get iridium, so this was a good find. With my newfound iridium, I decided to place 3 Tier 1 heaters, although it kind of made my power go out. I decided that we should upgrade our power. Instead of wind turbines, we'll go for solar panels. These solar panels were a lot better than the wind turbines and were a little bit more expensive, but not too bad. While exploring, I found a shipwreck and a sandy waterfall, something I'd return to later. I also made the torch chip, as I actually want to see when I go inside shipwrecks. I then did a bit of expanding, adding more storage, and adding more solar panels, as I was going to add more things that required a lot of power. I decided to check what I was going to unlock. I really need this Tier 2 Veggie Tube and this Tier 2 drill, and I was pretty close to both of them. I unlocked and crafted the Tier 3 backpack, which gave us another row of items to hold, and I unlocked the Tier 2 Veggie Tube that I would instantly be crafting. I then decided to do a bit more exploring, finding more loot along the way, alongside some more caches. Storage was becoming a problem once again, so we expanded that. We also unlocked the Tier 2 drill, which we crafted a few of. I then decided to go explore that waterfall of sand I saw earlier and the shipwreck, but I decided to go for the waterfall of sand first. Upon entering, I found a resource that I was much in need of: aluminum. Now, I unfortunately thought this was an aluminum cave, but this is not the case, it's an iridium cave. I would soon find out where the aluminum resides. With my newfound iridium, I decided to craft Tier 2 heaters instead of Tier 1, increasing our heat production by quite a bit. I decided to expand upwards and place my heaters up there, as I didn't really like them on my first floor. I unlocked the communication antenna, which allows me to receive messages from Sentinel Corp and someone named Riley, which we have yet to discover yet. I then unlocked the Tier 3 oxygen tank, which brings us from 200 seconds of uptime to 280 seconds of uptime. While going back to the ship to receive some of the resources I left behind, I saw a cave with some ice blocking it. Now, I didn't go up to the ice, but when you approach it, it tells you need a certain amount of heat so the ice can melt. There was a message on the ship where I learned its name and what happened to it. The message basically says that their ship randomly lost power and that they had to make an emergency landing on the planet we're on. Unfortunately, at the time of landing, there was a huge storm going on and they weren't even sure if they're going to be able to make it out. After trying to fit too many snacks in my pocket, I unlocked the Tier 2 solar panel, a very good upgrade to our power. I decided to move my base a little bit closer to the Iridium Cave, because that's where I thought aluminum was. I really wasn't that far off, as the aluminum was to the right of my base, although I didn't really know that until much later on. The moving process took quite a bit of time. I'm not going to talk over it, and you can just enjoy the process of me demolishing my entire base. While doing a bit of deconstruction and reconstruction, I unlocked the Tier 2 exoskeleton, something I'd be putting on my to-do list. I also unlocked the food grower. Not really a big thing, but definitely something that will come in handy later on. And with these last two little cubicles, we no longer have a base. The only thing left is to get rid of these drills and power sources and then bring them back to our main base. I also craft these newly acquired Tier 2 solar panels, and they are a much better addition than the Tier 1 solar panels. I also get this progress screen, which allows me to see how close I am to the next progression stage. After just moving everything, I unlock a bigger storage, and I just decided to, get over it and build the bigger storages as they are much, much better. I decided to expand our VeggieTube farm once again, increasing our total to 7. I then decided to go explore the ship that's right behind my base, since I've been putting it off for quite some time. But unfortunately, after only looting basically 2 chests, I had to go back home. Thankfully, from the shipwreck, I got the materials needed to craft an antenna, which means I can now receive messages from Sentinel Corp and the mysterious Riley. Upon placing down our message receiver, I learned that I'm actually a convict, and the reason I'm here is to, lower my sentence. Also, I unlocked the Tier 3 drill. Sentinel Corp then sends me another message, basically just describing what my planet is and giving me information about it. I then go back to the shipwreck behind my base, find a Tier 2 heater that I deconstruct, and some aluminum in some crates. This is good because I don't actually have an aluminum source, and nor do I know where aluminum is, abundantly found. I then decided to build our first Tier 3 drills. These are a very, very big improvement to Tier 2 drills, and they are very, very much bigger. I then go to the Iridium Cave to get some aluminum and some iridium, as I'm going to be making more Tier 2 heaters alongside some more Tier 3 drills. While farming, I unlocked the Tier 3 VeggieTube, which is very, very helpful, as oxygen is my lackey compared to heat and pressure. Once I exited the cave, I looked in the sky and realized it was turning a bit of blue and purplish, meaning I was close to my first terraformation progress. With my new tier 3 drills, I decided to deconstruct all my tier 2 drills as they weren't really giving as much as the tier 3 drills, even with all 6 of them. We then get our first message from Riley. She basically informs us that as a planet crafter, our success rate is extremely low as our task is almost impossible. She also gives us many tips and advice to make sure that we survive and actually terraform the entire planet. I placed these tier 3 veggie tubes outside as you cannot place them inside, and this is a much needed oxygen upgrade. I then place our first food grower, as I am running low on food and I need some sort of renewable source. I place this handy dandy little beacon outside the front of my base so I don't ever lose my base location. I then finally realized I can actually decode these microchips, and this is very helpful for me since I unlocked 3 very helpful things: the tier 1 mining speed, the tier 1 agility boots, and the compass. I finally decided to go up to one of these icebergs and realize that yes, I do need a certain amount of heat so it can start melting. I found our first golden crate. These golden crates are supposed to have a golden seed in it, but unfortunately it didn't have anything. I'm not sure if this was a bug or if it's supposed to be a golden crate that doesn't have a golden seed. I'm not really sure. I also unlocked Advanced Crafter and 175,000 terraformation, which means I have blue sky. I unlocked the tier 1 nuclear reactor, something I will not be crafting for a while as I don't really know where uranium is and I don't have any of it besides finding it in crates. Alongside the nuclear reactor, I get tier 1 mining speed, the agility boots, and the compass. Also unlocking the tier 3 heater along the way, a much needed heat upgrade. I then look at the message that I received earlier, again from Riley, telling me that I should build my base at an altitude, and if I have enough heat, the planet will heat up and melt the ice away. Thankfully my base is already built at an altitude, so I don't have to worry about that. I also checked out my next terraformation stage, which would be clouds, and I'm already 15% of the way done. I explored the right side of my world next. This is where aluminum is, but unfortunately I didn't see any aluminum when I was coming in here because I'm a little bit stupid, but I did find a bunch of good loot. With the blueprint chips I found from exploring this area, I got tier 2 agility boots and tier 2 mining speed. I then decided to explore this rocky, spiky area that had tier 2 solar panels that I could deconstruct and put in my own base, and there's also some crates here that had a lot of loot in it. I saw this cave while heading back to my base, and I decided to explore it, although my journey came up short as there was an iceberg blocking it and I couldn't really go any further. I then received a message from a fellow planet crafter. He was asking for help as his planet was basically unterraformable, as the conditions were way too rough. I did a few chores around the base, like replacing these Cs, and finally upgrading to a Tier 4 backpack and a Tier 4 oxygen tank. While getting ready to upgrade our Tier 2 heaters to Tier 3 heaters, I unlocked the grass spreader. I then unlocked Tier 3 mining speed. Pressure was lagging a little bit behind after all the new upgrades, so I decided to build some more Tier 3 drills. I also invested into our first grass spreader. As the name implies, it spreads grass. Unfortunately, when placing down my second grass spreader, I lost power, and this made me realize that I'm gonna need those nuclear reactors soon. I also got this launch platform, which allows me to send rockets into space that increase my heat, oxygen, and pressure multipliers, alongside some other things later on. We then enter another wreck. This one's a lot bigger and a little bit more mazy-like, but it holds a lot of goods. The 3 blueprint microchips that I got from the ship didn't really give me anything of interest, besides maybe the big living compartment that I would use to expand my base. While expanding my base, I unlocked the biodome, which gives me a few good multipliers, alongside some things I couldn't see in my regular base. I then start the long and tedious process of moving everything. I look into investing in some ore extractors, but it costs osmium, something I haven't come across yet. I unlocked the atmospheric water collection, meaning I now have a renewable source of water without having to use ice. With that, I also unlock clouds, meaning it's going to be raining from now on, and I will see clouds in the sky. Or at least, I should, but I don't see any here. This new water collection system gives me a water bottle every 2.5 minutes, which is very good. While going back to pick up some loot I left in the wreck, I looked that the cave has actually started to melt, and this is where I found the osmium. This is very useful, because I needed osmium for quite a few crafting recipes, and I did not know where it was. Alongside the osmium, there was also a plentiful amount of sulfur, something I didn't even know how to use yet, so it wasn't really useful. Also, another iceberg blocking even further entrance. I decode 3 more blueprints and get nothing of real use, maybe besides the Tier 1 GPS, but even that's not that great. This is when I realized that aluminum is on the right side of my base, and it is a plentiful amount of it. I don't know how I didn't see this earlier. Thankfully, this blueprint chip actually gave me something useful, a Tier 2 torch. This is very helpful because the Tier 1 torch kinda sucks, and I also found a use for sulfur. Alongside the Tier 2 torch, we get the biolab. Once again, pressure was lacking behind, so I added another drill. Since the ice was starting to melt, I decided to go check the other caves that had ice behind it. And what I find? More osmium. Very nice. I then decided to go explore, as I still need to find uranium so I can get the Tier 1 nuclear reactors, and I was actually getting pretty close to a Tier 2 nuclear reactor, so I was just rushing to find uranium as fast as I could. While exploring, I came across these big meatballs, and they were kind of blocking my path, so I didn't really know what to do with it. A little more exploration leads me to this crashed satellite. I was very confused at what it was, trying to deconstruct it, but it was actually just a cache. And finally, out of the corner of my eye, I spot it, a uranium cave. This is massive, because now I can actually make a good power source. I decided to set up a temporary base here, as I can get infinite oxygen if I just set up a little base, and I would use this as my uranium cave for now. With my newfound uranium, I start work on our first Tier 1 nuclear reactors. And with that, we finally have a good power source at hand. Now we can finally make more machines without worrying about our power shutting down. With this newfound power, I make an ore extractor. I place it in the aluminum area because I wanted to get some aluminum as I didn't really have a good source of it, hoping that it would mine it, and thankfully it did. After that, I decide that we should place our biolab down. I place this in a really odd area, and I do move it eventually, but for now, this will do. Inside the biolab, it gives me access to a new progress screen. Plants, biomass, insects, and animals. I remember there being ice in the Iridium Cave, so I decided to go back and check what's behind it. What I find is a very, very gassy area. I assume this is where sulfur is, as sulfur is a bit stinky, and I was correct. On my way to the uranium cave, I come across my first golden seed. Now, you won't hear me get the achievement for this golden seed because it already gave me the achievement. I don't really know why, because I never had a golden seed, so I got really confused. I also tried placing an ore extractor in the uranium cave, hoping it would mine uranium. Sadly, I was wrong. I would need a higher tier ore extractor to mine uranium, but we don't have it yet. So instead I use those materials I had from the ore extractor and place it in the iridium cave to get some more iridium, as I was running low and I didn't really feel like mining it anymore. I moved my nuclear reactors and added a third one as my power was getting a little bit dangerously low. I then watch and grace as my terraformation stage reaches liquid water. While just climbing the side of this big rock, I made an extremely good discovery. An area that spawns super alloy naturally. This is so huge because I didn't want to keep crafting super alloy as it's really expensive, and I didn't really know where to get any. So I'm so glad that I actually found this. I also unlocked the Tier 2 jetpack, which is really nice as the jetpack is extremely useful. I finally decided to make a launch platform as I wanted to utilize it for the rockets. These rockets multiplied your heat multiplier, pressure multiplier, oxygen multiplier, and some other things later on. And this is really useful as it's a big multiplier. I can reconstruct my biodome so I can attach a biolab to it. The biolab just allows me to craft new things. While grinding for some more super alloy, I came across this wreck that I decided to explore. It had some pretty good loot, but nothing exceptional. The one exceptional thing, though, was the Tier 5 backpack, another very good upgrade. I finally decided to get the Tier 1 jetpack and upgrade that to a Tier 2 jetpack, and also upgrade my Tier 4 backpack to a Tier 5 backpack. I also decoded 2 blueprint chips, getting a Tier 4 mining speed upgrade and a map information rocket. Since the Tier 4 mining speed upgrade was very cheap, I decided to go ahead and craft that immediately. While getting ready to craft my first Tier 2 nuclear reactor, I unlocked the vehicle station. I craft our first Tier 2 nuclear reactor, which increases our power by a lot, much needed, and I craft the vehicle station, which allows us to craft the rover. The rover gives us free storage, so it's very, very good. While grabbing some uranium and iridium from falling meteors, I also come across our second golden seed. When heading back to base, I realized that I'm getting a lake. Water is forming where I had my previous base, so I'm glad I moved. While exploring the lake, I came across our third golden seed. How fortunate. I sent some more rockets into space to increase my heat and pressure multipliers, and I also came across a pretty funny bug. While going out to mine some sulfur, I get the flower spreader, which, as the name suggests, spreads flowers. I also craft a second Tier 2 nuclear reactor, as I need more power. My oxygen was quite lacking, so I decided to add 2 more veggie tubes so I could get it just a tiny bit better. I also decided to make this mapping screen, which allows me to see the entire map, although I need a satellite to be in space for that, which I decided to go make because the satellite is not too hard to make. Although the Tier 1 GPS satellite only really allows me to see a tiny bit of the map, and moving around is really slow, so I won't be using this too much. I also got an upgrade for the rover, which made me really want to get it, so I decided to just go make it. This rover is absolutely awesome. Instead of having to just use my one inventory space, I now have a massive storage I can use when exploring other areas. And one of the biggest positives is I don't even have to drive my rover back to the base, as I can just teleport it from anywhere on the map. And With my new rover, I decided to go on a looting haul. I went back to the ship I didn't really explore fully, nor did I get all the loot, and just grabbed everything I could and put it into my rover. Once done, I got the tier 3 agility boots, which I immediately crafted, as speed is a very important factor in this game. I decided to go around and do a looting spree of basically every shipwreck that I missed or left loot in, and use the rover because the rover has such a good inventory space. While exploring the other side of a cave, I came across this weird area. It kind of resembled a starry sky when I came into it, and I saw this pink thing in the distance, which turned out to be pulsar quartz, a very useful material later on. I also unlocked the tier 2 GPS, although I wouldn't be using either the tier 2 or the tier 3, and I would just skip straight to the tier 4 once I got it. While exploring and getting more loot, I discovered this crashed little ship. While coming close to it, there wasn't really an entrance, but there was a blueprint ship sitting in the front passenger seat. I've also come across our first multiplier fuse, which I can't use yet because I need an optimizer, which I don't know how to get, nor do I have access to it yet, but this will come in handy much later on. I also unlocked tier 2 pinning. I wanted to get this as fast as I could, but when looking at the recipe, I needed methane and I also needed zeolite, two things I had no clue how to get. But what I do know how to get is this algae collector, which produces algae. Now, algae, I don't really know what to use it for right now, but I know I need it later, so I just placed it for now. I also came to this weird sandy waterfall, which had a bunch of loot around it, but it was kind of strange. While exploring, I also came across this cave. I didn't really know what it was, so I decided to enter, and inside I found another area that had naturally spawning super alloy, which I thought was awesome. I also came across this big looking door. There was also some floating particles, didn't really know what that was about. But this giant door. I didn't know how to open it yet, but I decided that I'd probably need to come back to this later. Another broken down satellite. How tragic. But I will gladly take this oxygen multiplier and its loot that came along with it. My algae collectors also started producing algae, so I decided to collect a bit of it. Although, once again, I still didn't really have a use for it. I think the game knew I was sitting in my lake because I also got the lake water collector, which would be an improvement to my other water collector. This also meant I reached the lake stage in the terraformation process. I also decided to start placing down some food growers because I wanted to grow every food because it seemed to be in most recipes, so I kind of needed them. and I now have a new source of water. It holds a lot more water and produces water faster. While looking at how to make the flower spreader, I also got a message from Riley again. Once again, Riley's just giving me more tips, such as the rockets and the ore extractors, but I've already done both of these, so not very helpful. I also decided to place 2 more nuclear reactors as I need more power, and this is a really good source of power. I also expand our base. This would be the main crafting area eventually, much later down the road, but for now it's going to be the new heater area as I didn't really want a second floor anymore. I then put more rockets into space. This is something that will happen very often. I'm not going to commentate on all of it, but I use rockets pretty often. I get what I needed for the fuses, the optimizer. The optimizer is really good, as when you put a fuse in it, it will multiply upwards of 5 machines around it. I had to move my tier 3 veggie tubes as they were taking up machine slots for my optimizer and they weren't producing as much oxygen as other things around it. I also unlocked a tier 4 drill, something I would be making a lot of later, but it's pretty expensive. I craft this tier 2 biodome, which doesn't really do anything similar to the tier 1 biodome, besides it just produces tree bark. It's a bit strange. Continuing on with the plant life, I decided to make the flower spreader. For this to work, you need to plant a seed in it, and since I had so many golden seeds, I just placed one in there. It's now time to build the tier 4 drills. I deconstruct all the tier 3 drills because the tier 4 drills give you so much more. One tier 4 drill is equivalent to like 10 tier 3 drills. They're also much bigger. Since we had the lake stage, we were now moving on to the moss stage, and as you can see, we were having some greenery growing around. While exploring, I found a zeolite cave, but no zeolite in sight, besides these big nodes. So I'm guessing this is where I could mine zeolite with an ore extractor. After leaving the zeolite cave, I found a huge dust bowl. I couldn't go in it now, but later it'd probably disappear. At least I hope it would. I then unlocked the tier 2 algae collector. This doesn't really make a big difference, it just has a bigger radius. While searching for some good loot, I come across an abandoned base. Someone was here before me. When I go down the ladder, I come across a message from someone who, I think his name is Xiaodan. I also learned that Xiaodan was a planet crafter like myself. He also got sent to this planet to terraform it, but it seems that he failed. Further messages reveal that Xiaodan was not very lucky because it seems that he needs 2 years to even get blue sky, something I got pretty fast. These messages seem to be like diary entries. I kind of feel bad for him because he's saying he only did a small crime and such a punishment should not be befitting of him. So it's kind of sad. When I explored further, it seems that Xiaodan went insane because he had messages of Sentinel Corp saying the same exact thing over and over again scattered across his wall. And I mean a lot. And I kind of got concerned for him. What I am happy about, though, is that Xiaodan left a really good loot in his locker. Thank you, man. Xiaodan's final message is to curse the Sentinel Corpse, because he said that the mission that they sent him on is impossible, and that he's just here to die. After that whole Xiaodan fiesta, I make another tier 4 drill, as I need more pressure. I also get this spacesuit displayer, something I never use, but something that's actually pretty cool. I should have used this. And also a display case, another thing I never use, but probably would have been pretty cool. While placing down my optimizer for my drills, I unlock the gas extractor. Now I know where I get methane from. I unlocked this biomass screen, and that also means I'm now 100% done with the moss stage, moving on to the plants stage. I decided to actually make a tier 2 algae collector, although it really isn't that much different from a tier 1 algae collector. I do a bit of exploring and find this amazing waterfall. I'm going to go explore it and see what's behind it. There's always something behind waterfalls. Unfortunately, behind the waterfall was not something beautiful. I'm pretty sure these were gravestones, and my suspicions were proved correct when I read the message. This message reads basically that they were having a fun time on a cruise, but now they're burying the bodies of their comrades. A little bit more exploration, I find the lava zone. I didn't really know what to do with this lava zone, but it was burning me a lot, and I didn't like it. But there was obsidian here, a new resource I've never found. I also got a little toasty for an achievement. I also found myself in another wreck. This wreck was pretty hard to find the entrance, but had so much good loot in it. And while exploring inside the wreck, I unlocked the tier 2 ore excavator, meaning I can now mine higher tier ores. There was also this area locked behind some computers that required a tier 2 deconstruction ship, something I did not own, so I'd have to come back to this at a later date. And finally, zeolite was spawning in my world. I found my first chunk, and it would only be more after this. And these next two blueprint ships were absolutely amazing. Infinite oxygen while inside my vehicle, and another inventory increase. These were two major upgrades that I really needed. Unfortunately, oxygen required zeolite, but it was now spawning in my world. I just had to find more of it. I finally unlocked the oxygen multiplier rocket, the seed spreader. While getting ready to craft infinite oxygen, I unlocked the DNA manipulator, which allows me to craft certain type of tree seeds. And this also means I moved on to the plant stage, and now we're going to the tree stage. Right after breaking my legs, I receive another message, and this is from Riley. Riley tells me that there's something off about my planet, and she sends me these coordinates that I need to head to. I built the gas extractor a little bit ago, I don't really remember when, but now it's producing methane. And I craft my first batch of oxygen multiplier rockets. While in the Iridium Cave to grab this zeolite, I saw that I could climb the vine behind it. And when I climbed it, there was a bunch of more zeolite on top, which was very, very handy. I then do this cinematic jump off the cliff. That's pretty cool. After that, I get the Tier 4 heater, a major upgrade to the regular Tier 3 heater. And now that I'm getting methane, I can get the Tier 2 pinning chip. I then unlock the Tier 3 exoskeleton, a much needed upgrade as I had no more chip slots. Unfortunately, the Tier 3 exoskeleton costs super alloy rods, and I have no clue how to get this. On the bright side, I'm placing down Tier 4 heaters, and they are a much, much better improvement to the Tier 3 heaters. I also optimize these machines to make them as efficient as possible. I maxed up the speed on my vehicle because it was a little bit slow and I could use the speed. I revisit the cave where I found the door in hopes that I can place an ore extractor here and get super alloy. Thankfully, I was right. I unlocked the plant rocket, which just increases the plant modifier, which I don't really use right now because I don't have anything that really gives me plants. I then find this shipwreck, which requires explosives, something I don't have still, so I'll have to come back to this later. But what I do stumble upon is the Rainbow Caves. Rainbow Caves is basically just a cave system that has every single type of quartz. First I found Pulsar Quartz, which is really nice because Pulsar Quartz is probably the most important out of all of them. And right next to the Pulsar Quartz is Magnetar Quartz, which is a purplish quartz. I didn't go exploring for the rest of the colors of quartz, but what I did find is a bug. I was permanently underwater. This is the vision you kind of get when you go underwater, and it was just permanently here. All I had to do was reset my game, though. But before resetting my game, I find another underground base, and in it is a new person, Iklas. Iklas is a person that we will be covering for the rest of the game, basically, as he's our main protagonist, besides myself. This is the beginning of the story for Iklas, as he explains that his ship crash landed and everyone died besides himself. From the blueprint chips we got from Iklas, I finally got Tier 2 deconstruction, something I was really hoping for. While getting ready to move all my storage into the main room, I unlocked the air filter, which allows me to lose oxygen less and less depending on my terraformation stage. I didn't have enough slots for the air filter, so I needed to actually craft the Tier 3 exoskeleton, which I did learn how to make the super alloy rod a little bit ago, just required a lot of super alloy and aluminum. I craft the map chip and try using it by hitting M, but it doesn't work. I was really confused at first, but then I realized I don't even have the chip equipped yet, so obviously it's not going to work. I then returned back to the shipwreck that required the Tier 2 deconstruction to get past, and after going past it, I get a bunch more loot, and each deconstruction of a computer gives me circuit boards. I get the auto crafter soon after, and this is really good, as this will be my main room, and I don't really have to do any more crafting. I don't show it, but I unlocked the fusion reactor, which is a very, very good power source compared to the Tier 2 nuclear reactor. I also expand my Tier 4 heaters to 5, so I can power all of them with my optimizer. And I finally placed my first fusion reactor. It's a very, very good power source compared to the Tier 2 nuclear reactor, but it's pretty expensive. I went to check up on my super alloy farm, and to my surprise, it was working wonderfully. I knew it wouldn't just mine super alloy, but I didn't expect this much super alloy. I then went to go look at the progress on plants, insects, and animals, and realized that plants, the first thing is unlocked at 80 tons. And I'm not even close to that, so instead I just make this screen. Since I need a lot of plants, I make this plant rocket that I just got recently, and now my multiplier is a lot higher and I'm getting a lot more plants. Something I saw that was cool is the planet on the right side actually correlates to your progression in-game. That's pretty neat. I decided to head over to the coordinates that Riley gave me quite a bit ago, and I appeared to be in this mushroom kind of zone. After further exploration, I come across this thing called a Warden's Altar that requires something that I don't have yet, and it likely would open that door. But I do find this tablet from someone named the Warden. This isn't a person, but rather a species, and they came to this planet because they were running away from their quote-unquote curse, and they need to stay hidden from anyone from outer space, and this is the planet they chose. While exploring the rest of the cave, I unlocked the Tier 2 flower spreader. More flowers! Yay! In the middle of this mushroom biome, there's a big mushroom tree with something called the Warden's Key, alongside coordinates. And I'm guessing these coordinates would lead straight to the door that I was at previously, and I was right. The door opened up to a long corridor that led into a pretty open room with a bunch of pillars. On either side of the room there was tablets, and each tablet had a message from, again, a warden. Basically, they were fleeing their planet again because they keep getting followed by their quote-unquote curse that keeps killing off their people. In this message, it was a bit different. They were talking about how they first encountered humans, and how they were pretty much very similar. Besides their minds. Everything was very much the same besides how their minds were developed. I go down this long corridor into an open area with a spaceship, and I'm guessing this is what the Wardens came off of from. Down another corridor leads me to a Warden's Key plus more coordinates, which I'm guessing go to that door that is where my alloy farm is. I also unlocked the Tier 2 Optimizer, which allows 3 fuses instead of 1, and 8 machines instead of 5. So I go around replacing all the Tier 1 Optimizers for Tier 2, and putting 3 fuses in each. I get the Incubator, which allows me to craft things like larvae, fish eggs, and frog eggs. I place both the Incubator and the DNA Manipulator down right next to each other, as these two machines have very similar crafting recipes. I also got a bit mad here, as I did not want to make a silkworm, I wanted to make a bee larva, but apparently I mixed up the recipe, and I did not see that I actually needed Tier 1 mutagen. I also make this tree out of a golden seed, as most of the trees just require a mutagen, tree bark, and any type of seed, so I tried my luck with a golden one. I craft our first butterfly larva, and probably our last one, because we're never going to craft larva again. Whilst getting my butterfly larva, I also got a water filter, which allows me to drink water from any water source. I make our Tier 2 flower spreader so I can get more flowers, and also a good oxygen multiplier. And since both my flower spreaders are making plants, I decided to place another optimizer with 3 plant fuses in it. I make this little mapping screen that shows me all my rockets in orbit and the multipliers it's currently giving me. I then make our water filter, meaning I no longer have to carry water bottles around. I decided to ignore this message and go straight to the door that was near my super alloy farm. When I got there was a podium that wasn't there before, and I had the Warden's Key that fit right in there perfectly. Once again, down a long corridor, we meet ourselves with a Warden's Key, nothing else, just a warden's key. Very strange. I then come out into this area that has some Lost City ruins? I don't really know what this is, but this might have been where the wardens have lived. The only thing I really find here is this tablet, which actually explains how they did not like humans, and that they made a device that will make it so that humans will not be allowed on this planet and will be deterred from it. I then come across the thing that is blocking off communication from everyone else, this big glowing orb. The message that I received earlier is just from Sentinel Corp, telling me that I should use larvae to make butterflies, and also that I'm being closely monitored and I should not be communicating with anyone besides Sentinel Corp. I receive another message from Riley, which I don't even look at for a very, very long time, and also the blueprint for a trade rocket. And while exploring more of the lava zone, I found another underground base. This base belongs to our old friend, Xiao Dan, and it's basically him having another sad episode where he misses his family, he's lonely, he's cold, and he's lost all hope. This last message is kind of like a will. I'm not really sure how to explain this one, as it's mostly just him kind of preaching. Right next to Xiao Dan's underground base was a massive ship crash, and this had a bunch of loot. I decided to move my tier 4 drills as I wanted to place more of them, and where they currently were, I could not really expand. While doing all this, I unlocked the tier 2 food grower, something I barely would use because it's honestly not that good. From my 5 blueprint chips, the only real thing I got was the tier 3 jetpack. Everything else was kinda subpar. I decided to place an ore excavator in one of the osmium caves as I was running low and I didn't really have a renewable source of it, alongside placing this trade rocket, which allowed me to trade with all the coins I would get, that I have none of. I decided to trade away a few fuses and a few effigies as I didn't have any money and I could trade them for 7,500. While on my way back home, I unlocked a tree spreader, which means I can actually use the tree seed I got a long time ago. I didn't understand the tree spreader at first, as the tier 1 version requires it to be placed on water. I did figure this out soon, and I just, realized how stupid I was. And with all that effort of trying to get the tree spreader down, I lost all my power, so I need to get more power. So back to the Pulsar Cave we go, so I can get some Pulsar Quartz to make more fusion reactors. I received my 7,500 Terra tokens alongside trying to mine Pulsar Quartz in the Pulsar Cave, and unfortunately you cannot. Finally getting another fusion reactor down, I can go and place my tree spreader finally, alongside getting a tier 2 locker storage. While setting up some flower spreaders and optimizers, I got a weird little bug. My tree spreader was fully pink. How cute, but unfortunately I don't want to look at that, so we replace it. I also realized after insects was breathable air, so I no longer had to bring around oxygen canisters with me. I then placed my auto crafter, which is going to be useful for me alongside all the storages that I will have next to me, but I need to replace them with tier 2 locker storages as they are currently just regular storages. I then craft my tier 3 jetpack as I love moving and the jetpack is one of my favorite things in this game right now. After doing some chores around the base, I finally unlocked the beehive, which is massive because now I can finally start getting insects. After that little funny interaction with the rockets, I place our first beehive, which is really nice since it produces a bunch of insects. I then unlocked the teleporter. Although very useful, I barely use it, and it is kind of overlooked as you don't really need it that much. I also unlocked the butterfly dome, which is kind of meh. Although the butterfly dome is kind of meh, at least we have butterflies now. They're pretty cool. We finally get the tier 2 locker storage, which means I can now start on my main base, which requires everything to be moved, so time to redo everything. Tier 2 lockers required super alloy to craft, and I didn't really have a lot of it, so I added another ore extractor to my super alloy farm. I unlocked the tier 3 tree spreader before the tier 2 tree spreader somehow. I'm not really sure how that happened, but it's pretty cool. Alongside crafting my new tier 3 tree spreaders, I also got breathable air, so I no longer need to bring oxygen tanks anywhere. One of the achievements was to get hit by a meteor, and I was having difficulty doing it because they were really fast, but this one was really slow, so I kind of just let it hit. This meteor gave me a lot of pulsar quartz, which was honestly welcome because I did not have a lot of it, and I didn't really know how to get a lot of it. After taking a big gulp of water, I get the tier 3 ore extractor. This allows me to choose what ore I want to mine instead of having to get random odds. I decided to replace my tier 2 ore extractors with tier 3 ore extractors in my super alloy farm so I can specifically mine for super alloy. A little late, but we get the tier 2 tree spreader. I get these fusion energy cells, which allow me to activate fusion reactors inside of shipwrecks. I activate my first fusion reactor inside the ship that's right next to spawn. I find my first vault, which has a ton of Terra tokens in it, which is honestly a great find. I unlock a huge milestone, the drone station. Although I don't use it for a little bit, the drone station is one of the biggest things in the entire game. Before crafting the drone station though, I want tier 2 drones, which means I need to get 12,000 Terra tokens. I visit another crash ship with a few fusion energy cells to activate the fusion reactor in it, hoping to get even more loot and more Terra tokens. I also find a secret compartment behind this little hidden wall, and it has a bunch of good loot in it. Once done exploring the big wreck, I add more storage to my storage room because I'm going to be making this my main crafting area. I also got this shredding machine, which allows me to send any item straight into the void. I made this little area for my teleporters, not really realizing that I only needed one, so I made it a little too big. And we also remove our long beloved solar panels. I placed a tier 3 ore extractor in the lava zone so I can start farming for obsidian, as obsidian is now a much needed resource, alongside a teleporter so I don't have to run back and forth a few miles. I had a few leftover fusion energy cells, so I decided to go to the shipwreck in the lava zone just see what I could get. I decided that I should actually try and upgrade my map as I finally have the tier 4 GPS satellite. Also placing an unnecessary teleporter here. It's not very far from my base, I just placed it because, I don't know, kind of felt like it. And with the tier 4 GPS satellite, you can see that you can see a lot more than the tier 1. And honestly, it was kind of worth it. While watching this chaos, I unlocked the Butterfly Farm, a much better version of the Butterfly Dome. And since it's so much better and so much smaller, I just get rid of the Butterfly Dome entirely. I finally make our most prized possession, the drone station. Although I won't really be making a drone yet, as I'm waiting for the tier 2 drone still. Drones are pretty cool, as they take items from certain inventories and can place them in other inventories with priority settings. I really like this, and it makes the game a lot easier. It's basically automation. I also unlocked the tier 4 exoskeleton. Although not useful to me right now, it will come in handy later. And we now finally have our tier 2 drones, which means we can start our drone automation process. I start off by crafting 5 drones. Some of them were pink and some of them were blue. It was a bit strange, but they're drones nonetheless. I'm not going to show it all, but I go around my entire world doing demand and supply on literally everything in my world. It took a very long time and was kind of tedious. I also added a few more drones to my collection as 5 was just a little too slow. I was looking to make the tier 4 exoskeleton, and that's when I realized it cost a quartz I've never come across before, the Blazar quartz, or this bluish quartz. So with that in mind, I head back to the Rainbow Caves, find Blazar quartz, and also Solar quartz. There's a neat little feature I have here called the dump chest, which has a supply for everything, meaning I can just place anything in this chest and my drones should automatically take it to their corresponding storages. While exploring, I find this area that I definitely was not supposed to be in. I go back to the Rainbow Caves as I'm still lacking in Pulsar quartz, as I don't really know how to get a lot of it. And once again, another cinematic fall. I was lacking in sulfur, so I placed a tier 3 ore extractor in the sulfur area and got my drones to work. I'm not going to show every ore extractor process, but this is what I did with all of them. I had an extra storage right next to it, just in case my main storages fill up. I bought these fish eggs, which was definitely not worth it, but I had an aquarium with no fish in it, and I couldn't really craft fish eggs, so in my mind it was important. I was really needing zeolite, and I remember the zeolite cave I found a long time ago, so I placed a tier 3 ore extractor and did the same process I did with sulfur. I also revisited the Dust Bowl I saw a long time ago, and to my surprise, the dust was completely gone, leaving a beautiful lake and a central island. I feel as if there was a missed opportunity here, because the central island had literally nothing on it, which kind of disappointed me. What I did find, though, was another underground base, owned by Iklos. This message by Iklos is questioning if anyone even remembers him or if he can even escape the planet. He's going to do his best to survive, though, and he was wondering if help was on the way. Surely someone was looking for him. Iklos then goes on to explain how he has enough food and water, and that he might just die here alone, and that something was off about this planet, and well, he wasn't really wrong. On my journey back home, I unlock a huge milestone, the Tier 5 heater. I then decided to just replace my Tier 4 heaters, as the Tier 5 heaters weren't actually that expensive. I made more drones as, once again, it felt a little too slow. Also upgrading my exoskeleton to tier 4 along the way. Once again, not really needed, but something I just decided to craft to get it out of the way. I got my fish eggs, put them in my aquarium, and now I have fish. I love fish. I got this information rocket, which allows me to see where certain types of ores are around the map. Although this is really cool, it's not really helpful to me anymore, as I already have all the ores I want, so meh. I also get this machine that turns certain items back into their base form. This is actually pretty useful for certain things later on. While recycling uranium rods, I got the recipe for Pulsar quartz, which is huge because I actually had no idea how to get more of it. Unfortunately, one of the things I needed was methane, something I did not have a lot of, so I'd have to find a way to mass produce that. Also, I put down some more power, as power was still a major issue. I finally went back to this area as I thought I was missing something, because there was really no progression. I didn't have coordinates, I didn't have anything. And, well, I was right. I crossed this little boardwalk, and what did I find? Another coordinate. I then headed over to the coordinates, came across a podium that required 3 warden keys, and that dropped this giant rock. Now, this took an absolute eternity to drop, so we'll just skip that. When entering, I got the achievement for entering the Lost Paradise, and I came across this really beautiful area with another lost ruined temple kind of thing. There were warden keys scattered all around the paradise, and I would need 5 of them to unlock a door. And the one thing that really caught my attention, though, were these butterfly larvae sitting on the ground, because there were so many of them, and they were really, really good. Near the podium that required 5 warden keys, there was a message saying, "Once we lived." Very cryptic. Once all 5 keys were in, the door behind it started opening. Another very long animation. We then head down a long corridor into a big open area with a bunch of golden butterflies. The message is pretty cool. It talks about how their people, the wardens, have this calamity/curse that just keeps following them and gets rid of their people all the time. Each golden crate held 1 golden butterfly larva, which is the best butterfly larva you can get in the game. While on my way back home, I found yet another underground base. This little base was owned by Iklas, and this message was talking about how he found a way to escape the planet. The 2 blueprint chips I got gave me a tier 3 inventory space for my vehicle and a drone visualization rocket, which was pretty cool. I immediately made the tier 3 inventory space because the vehicle is just so broken. Since I got those new butterfly larvae, I decided to start spamming butterfly farms everywhere. We also place our final 2 heaters, which makes a total of 8 tier 5 heaters. I got this interesting unlock called the Portal Generator. I'm not really sure what this was, but honestly, I needed to craft it as fast as possible to find out what it was. Unfortunately for me, it was extremely, extremely expensive, and I would not be able to craft it for quite some time. This is when the realization kicks in that the recipe is a lot harder than it looks, and I'm probably not going to be able to craft it. Also, I'm a bit silly. I never did the demand and supply for my zeolite, so I was really confused when I wasn't getting zeolite, so I went back to my farm and realized, yeah, I just forgot. I decided to go get some more loot on one of the ships by bringing some fusion energy cells and activating the reactor. This message was talking about a warp gate that would potentially make it so people can travel back and forth through this planet and another planet, but it failed the minute they turned it on. I also bought the 2 energy multiplier fuses I needed so I can craft the portal generator. And finally, I unlocked the explosive, meaning I can now go to places I wasn't able to before. The rest of the blueprints didn't have much of interest besides maybe the tier 3 torch and the tier 3 pinning, but other than that, it was pretty meh. I finally make use of our explosives by going to an area I couldn't access a while back because big meatballs were in the way. Inside was just another shipwreck. A lot of loot, a lot of exploring, a lot of money. The one thing that was different was this area that required an access card, something I did not have. I did find it in the ship though, so thankfully it was there. Sadly, the loot was a bit subpar, not really giving me much, and I don't even know if it was worth it. After that exploration, we got our final blueprint, the Tier 3 deconstruction. I unlocked the Tier 2 gas extractor, which actually solves our methane problem, as you can choose which gas you want to extract. I also got my energy multiplier fuses, so now I can place this portal generator, which, as it suggests, makes portals. And I lied. This is actually the 8th Tier 5 heater. I scanned for my first portals, and I thought I got pretty lucky with a Rarity 5, Difficulty 5. But I was mistaken. The best portals you can get are at least a Rarity 5, Difficulty 3 or 4. There was an achievement for placing this outdoor farm. I didn't even use it, so I don't know. I then go through my first portal. Once through, it kind of looks like a drained out ocean. Alongside this shipwreck, every portal has 1 or 2 shipwrecks in it that you have to explore. Difficulty 5 shipwrecks usually entail a giant maze, as this is what this was. A giant maze. It took me about 2 hours to go through, so I didn't even show you any of it. But while I was exploring it, I got the Tier 6 backpack. Very useful, so I just crafted it immediately. From the shipwreck in the portal, I got this trade rocket multiplier fuse, which decreases the amount of time it takes for a rocket to return. So with that in mind, I bought some more energy fuses, as I wanted to use them on my energy sources. I also tried placing another Tier 3 tree spreader, but as you can see, I lost power immediately. Power was still a major issue. And I still have to wait 6 minutes for my fuse to come, but I did get the insect rocket, which is pretty cool. And once my fuses arrived, I got my optimizer ready and I placed it in. And now my energy was more than capable of handling everything. I went out to try to get some frog eggs crafted, but there was just frog eggs naturally spawning, so I didn't need to craft them. We now had these beautiful blue frogs in our base. I still needed to craft a tier 1 drone for an achievement, so I just did that pretty fast. One of the achievements was to craft a cookie, so I bought some wheat and cocoa seeds, as I need to start getting ready for that. I unlocked the partner of the tier 5 heater, the tier 5 drill, our final tier of drill. And since the tier 5 drills were pretty cheap, I just started placing as many as I could. But they were absolutely massive, holy crap. I managed to fit all of them in though. This was another run from a portal. I just got pretty good loot from this, so I thought I'd show it. But once again, I'm not going to show every portal run as they're pretty boring. I also got my first genetic trait, which was pretty cool. I started selling off fuses I didn't need because one of the achievements was to gain 100,000 Terra tokens. I also got the cooking station, which just allows me to craft the cookie that I need for an achievement. One of the portals required quasar quartz, which I didn't have, so I went to the Rainbow Caves and found it in one of the caves, and it's just this greenish quartz. So I made a little oopsie here. I was, exploring one of the portals, and then I realized I left my vehicle back in one of the portals and closed it. And yep, you cannot bring it back. How unfortunate. While searching for some uncommon larvae, I discovered another underground base. This message basically just tells us how he wanted to live in this dust bowl because it was a good place for the launch platform, but he couldn't see anything. Yeah, not the smartest idea, Iklas. And while searching for this osmium cave on the map, which I didn't need, but I thought I'd just find it because I thought I'd have some good loot in it, I found this beautiful, stunning waterfall. Exploring a little bit further leads me to these giant meatballs that I blew away with some dynamite. Behind the meatballs was some osmium, and honestly, I didn't care about the osmium anymore because the waterfall had an area that I wanted to explore. There was this area below the waterfall where you could swim around it, and I found a base here that belonged to Iklas. The message Iklas left me was something about how he will not surrender, and how he does not want to die on this planet, how he's going to live and how he's going to leave. I also found this message by a warden. This warden is basically talking about how everyone in the warden family is united, and he doesn't want to be one of them, he just wants to be himself. I follow this staircase up, and inside is the endgame for the Warden. This allows me to get the Warden ending. This chip in the middle will give me something that allows me to see Warden keys around the map, and once I get 10 of them, I have access to the Warden ending. This message left by the Warden talks about how some Wardens have chosen to leave before they die, and that if anyone wants to join them, we have to find 10 keys around the map and place them in an extraction pod. This last message is basically talking about how they want to survive and hopefully they can build a new colony, also apologizing to the rest of their people. While looking at the Warden Key Detector recipe, I unlocked the animal shelter, which means I'm now closer to getting animals on my planet. Once placing my golden frog eggs, I unlock the tier 2 aquarium. I do build this, however, I kind of forget about it later. I also finally build the silk generator, which obviously generates silk. And the reason I need this is because I can craft fabric with it, and I was missing a bunch of fabric for things. I place our shelter a little bit early as I won't be getting any animals for quite some time. While going out to try to get some more loot, I actually stumbled across our first Warden Key. Only 9 more to go. You know what? Let's just throw another one in there. Only 8 left. The reason I found those 2 is because I was coming over to this area to destroy some meatballs as I wanted to access this shipwreck. Looting process is still the same. Go in, grab loot, get out. There's nothing new. Our next terraformation stage is our last one though. That's pretty cool. I place this water life collector as I want some phytoplankton to craft fish eggs. And in doing so, I get the genetic synthesizer, which allows me to take genetic traits and make animals, although I have no way of getting genetic traits yet. While trying to find more Warden Keys, I stumbled upon this cave. Now this cave, I have no idea what it is or what purpose it has. I explored the entire thing and there was nothing. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be some kind of content that they scrapped, but it was kind of pointless, so I won't recommend you going here. Although it wasn't all useless as I found another underground base. We then stumble across Jeremiah, another planet crafter. Although, I'm pretty sure this is the only base he has around anywhere, and we don't really hear from him ever again. Jeremiah talks about the Wardens and the tablets that somehow are unreadable, but apparently we can read them. I'm not really sure how that works. We then find out Jeremiah wasn't actually a planet crafter, but a scavenger assigned to reconnaissance mission, whose goal was to find disappeared ships. Jeremiah's last message talks about how there was indeed a lost civilization here. The ecosystem is an extremely good blueprint, as it allows larvae to spawn, and larvae are probably the most painstakingly awful thing to grind for. I set up a little storage system and the shredder that shreds up the larvae I don't need. Since my terraformation process was only at 2 trillion out of 5 trillion and it was gaining slowly, I decided to build 8 more tier 5 heaters as these were my most productive things. I also became a rich man, getting 100,000 Terra tokens total. Alongside being rich, I get more bees, and this beehive is extremely important. I was glad to see that my life collector was working, and now I could actually make some fish eggs, so I decided to build the aquarium. Adding 2 fish eggs to the aquarium means we now have some beautiful, beautiful fish roaming our aquarium, and oh my goodness, I love fish. At last, I get the genetic extractor, meaning I can now exchange certain things for genetic traits, which means I can now finally craft animals. And with that, we get our first animal. We have this pink little thing, and he's absolutely beautiful. He's a little bit chirpy, but I can deal with that. And of course, you can pet them, the most important mechanic of the game. But why stop at one animal? Let's get a second one. And this one was also a beautiful, beautiful creature. I upgraded our butterfly farms to tier 2 butterfly farms, as I still needed a lot of insects for our last crafting recipe, and this got it pretty fast. Once again, we add another animal to our collection. I absolutely love these things, they are adorable. We got the achievement of all achievements, crafting a cookie. This was the hardest achievement in the entire game. I also get another species of animal. This one is absolutely my favorite. He has a little tail, it's beautiful, he's pink, he's blue, he looks amazing. I also watch as I get my final tier of jetpack, the tier 4 jetpack. While going on an exploration journey, I find my third Warden key. Only 7 left. Behind these big meatballs was a door that required 5 access cards, and I had no idea how I was going to get this. Did I say I didn't know how I was going to get this? I was joking. In the portals, if you had a difficulty 3 or higher, there was access cards that you could get for free in there, and you could bring back. So I got all 5 from portals that I grinded for about 3 hours, and here we are, back at Ikelas's final base. This is Ikelas's final message, how he escaped the planet. I always believed in you, Ikelas. Good job, brother. Each base that Ikelas had a message in it. This one talking about how he's gathered enough materials to make his departure platform. This message is about how this is Ikelas's final camp and that he has all he needs to survive here, but it's a little bit hostile. Ikelas started to question if no one would remember him, and honestly, what if he just stayed on the planet? I don't agree, Ikelas. Leave the planet. After putting way too many heat rockets into space, I decided to go around the map searching for the last Warden keys, as there was 13 total around the map, but you only needed 10. So eventually I'd find them, right? And with that, my total comes to 10. I also did a few more portals in between to get some more money, and I watched as my final terraformation stage reached 100%, earning me an extraction platform and a message from Sentinel Corp. The message was talking about how there was an anomaly that was preventing them from coming to the planet and picking me up, and I knew what I had to do: destroy the giant floating orb. As we place our giant TNT underneath the glowing orb, we say goodbye to the, well, giant glowing orb. While I was AFK, I received a message from Riley. I never checked this, but this is the message of Riley's ending, which allows me to leave the planet with different people. I never checked it, so I thought I never got the message. I'm a bit of an idiot. And with our extraction platform built, we get our first ending, leaving with Sentinel Corp. Sentinel Corp congratulates me on terraforming the planet, but instead of removing my sentence, they're just going to reevaluate it, and for now, I'm still going to be in their custody. So this is obviously the worst ending possible. We then move on to the Warden ending, which is a much better ending. The message this time is basically, anyone who follows them, their destiny is that of doom. And honestly, if you're following the Wardens, good luck. But they do not give up, so neither should you. Now, the last ending's a bit interesting. After getting a total obtained currency of $200,000, you will receive a message from Riley. As I showed you in the recording, I did get the message. I just never saw it because I was AFK, and I didn't really check the messages to see if I actually got anything. So I looked it up. I know it's a bit cheaty, but I was a little bit stupid. And the way to get this ending is by getting $250,000 and 5 solar quartz. And once you get this, you will receive the option to leave with the smugglers, giving you the third and final ending. And with that, we come to a close. This is our third and final ending, and the game is now 100% completed. Sorry for the late upload. Next episode will be a little bit sooner, I hope, depending on how long it takes me to complete the game that I have chosen. And I will be using my microphone in-game as well, alongside a few other changes so you can actually see the Steam achievements I get, rather than just hearing the noise. With that, I thank you all for watching, enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you next episode.